Hello, welcome back to YCFT. We changed the plans for this video midway through. Well, I say like a few days ago. We were initially going to be doing one of our anniversary videos. We're going to do the 10-year anniversary of 2012's The Woman in Black, made by a returning Hammer film starring Daniel Radcliffe, fresh off Harry Potter.
Yeah, yeah.
And we are still going to do that. We are still going to talk about that film. But when I was tracking down some films, I managed to find the 1989?
89, yeah.
89 TV movie version of The Woman in Black. This aired Christmas Eve 1989 on ITV.
Yeah.
Had reruns maybe about a year later on Channel 4 and then very much disappeared
Kind of just
until
disappeared into obscurity.
like 2014, 2015 when...
Yeah.
I think you could get it on video.
Yeah, there was a DVD release at some point too.
It wasn't very good. This is
quality.
2015. They did a full 2K restoration of it.
It's such a beautiful thing.
I saw one copy of it, and I was like, I've got to. I've absolutely got to. So we're doing a versus. We're going to compare them.
We're doing a versus. I wanted to see the 1989 version for so long.
I just want to say I found the entire film on YouTube as well.
Yeah. Even though I really desperately wanted to watch it, apparently I didn't look too far to find it because it is on YouTube. But I'm so happy we have it on Blu-ray.
I do have to say that the quality of that Blu-ray is outstanding for a TV movie as well. And they're both very different adaptations.
Yes. Well, I would also just like to say that The Woman in Black, for me, is one of the rare instances in horror, and pretty much like, I guess, all of media, where I have seen and experienced every incarnation of the story. So I've read the book, I have seen the play several times, I've seen the 2012 film many times, and now I can say I've seen the 1989, the first adaptation.
Have you seen the sequel to the film?
I have also seen the not so great sequel in 2015. Yeah.
I've
seen everything.
You took me to see the play for my birthday a couple of years ago, just pre-pandemic, and the play is terrifying. I never thought I could be scared by a play, and it's kind of what's led to us getting tickets for the Let the Right One In theatrical version.
Soon.
Horror theatre apparently is scary. So, which adaptation do we want to talk about first?
I don't know. Should we go in chronological order, or do you want to go with the one we're more familiar with?
We should start with the 2012 one.
Okay.
Just because I feel like that's the one that most people are familiar with. It's the one we're more familiar with. Like I said, stars Daniel Radcliffe as Arthur Kip.
Daniel Radcliffe. It's his first role outside of Harry Potter.
Yeah. And I think he does a fine job.
He does do a fine job.
I think it's as I've gotten older, because he's meant to be a family man within the film.
Yes, he's a dad.
And like he's a widower and he has a young boy. I always thought he was too young for the role. Mm-hmm. And it's just as I've gotten older, I kind of realize he is actually doing a very good performance. I just don't think he's got that much of a presence within the film.
Maybe.
But this was Hammer's big return.
Yes, it was. It was. So, I mean, we could probably do literally an entire video just based on the history of Hammer, which we're not going to do today because we are going to deep dive at some point into more Hammer films. But quick little tour of Hammer. So, obviously, they are a British film production company. They were founded in the 30s. They didn't initially set out to make horror films, but they ended up falling into horror. It became their bread and butter. And to this day, they have such a lasting legacy. Again, not just in horror, but just in British history, British cinema history. British productions, profoundly British cast and crew, British studios. And their bread and butter, I guess, was classic Gothic stories. So, of course, they became very famous for making several adaptations and sequels of Frankenstein. They started with The Curse of Frankenstein. That was a huge film. They did many films about Dracula. Monster movies as well. They dabbled with the Wolfman story. There's a famous film with Oliver Reed, I think from the late 50s or early 60s. And then the 70s is when we start to see a bit of a decline in Hammer. And really it's kind of the result of America, the rise of the American
They couldn't compete with Universal monsters.
They couldn't. I mean, you also had, the films like The Exorcist coming out, The Omen, grindhouse movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like a very different vibe and bigger budgets. And, like horror always has, it's evolved over time. And in the 70s, we saw the decline of the monster movie and of the ghost story, I guess, as well. So they sort of fell out of favour. They went into hibernation. And then around 2000, I think it was. They were purchased by an investor, and then kind of ever since then they tried to get back on their feet. And in 2007, they announced that they wanted to make The Woman in Black. It ended up being shot in 2010. It was released in 2012, and oh boy, was this film a success.
It was a massive success.
It was the success that Hammer needed, and very firmly they announced to the world, like, guys, we are back. We're here to make more films. This is what we want to do. And they started on such a strong film as well.
And basically then just fumbled.
They have worked since then. They have released a few films. Like The Lodge, I think, is the most recent one, which came out in 2019, which I haven't seen. But from what I understand, it is another ghost story. They are making, I think they've made it now, a Jekyll and Hyde film starring Eddie Izzard, which I cannot wait to watch.
But that's 10 years.
It's 10 years on. So they started off so strong with the return of The Woman in Black. And then, yeah, they haven't gone away, but they haven't seen the success of that again within the last 10 years. So I'm still, like, fingers crossed for me. You know, it's like a huge Hammer fan. I want to see more of their films. But I'm so happy they started with this story because it speaks to the heart of Hammer. This is such a classic gothic ghost story.
There are no bad adaptations of this.
No.
There's only a few, obviously there's only the TV movie, this feature film, the play and the book. The book came out in
1983, so the book came first. It's written by Susan Hill.
Yeah, the play came
1987.
And then so the 80s were a really good time for The Woman in Black, and then it literally took like 30 odd years for us to get the feature film version of it, and both are different.
Both are, both in their own way very faithful to the book. But they do take some liberties, and both of them kind of change things up for the sake of the story that they want to tell. And the 2012 one accentuates some things about the woman herself, whereas I guess the 1989 version is much more of a slow burner.
Yeah. It's a bit more ambiguous in places as well. I think a big part of the difference between the two is the house, Eelmarsh house itself in Criff and Gifford.
Yes.
In the 1989 one, obviously it's on its own little island in the marshes.
Yeah.
Only accessible by a causeway. Kind of similar, like, I'm from an area where we have certain parts, we have like a little lighthouse island where it is only accessible by certain. I was recently at Holy Island, which is only accessible at certain parts of the day.
Yeah.
So they used a real causeway for it.
Yeah.
And whereas in the 89 one, the house, like, it feels like a bit of an uncomfortable house, but it's not in disrepair.
No.
But in the 2012 one, that house is rotten to the core, and I think this film makes a much better use of the house, and the house to me always felt like a character.
Yeah.
More of a character than Daniel Radcliffe's Arthur Kipper's.
Yes.
You constantly feel like he's being watched. And obviously, the plot of the film is he's been sent there because the owner of the house, Alice Drablow, has passed away and needs to go settle her affairs.
Yes.
And legend amongst town is whenever the woman is seen, a child dies.
Yes.
Which I also want to say, I think maybe this is the difference between TV and feature. The kids die, the kids being killed elements is way more profound, prominent in the 2012 one. It's not really shown in the TV movie, but they make a big point of doing it, and I think that's what makes this film. Not only do you always feel like you're being watched by when you're in the house.
Yes.
But there's something, I always get creeped out by the ghosts of kids.
Ghost kids are freaky.
No one likes seeing kids die.
No.
And
no.
I say that there's very, very, very rare do you actually see the child actually die. We see the event that would kill the child. Mm-hmm. But it's still, like, pretty hot. And even 10 years later, rewatching this film. Do you have who plays the woman in the
2012 one? It's a Liverpudlian actress called Liz White.
I mostly know her from Life on Mars.
Yes.
She's a great actress. I know there's a different actress who played her in the sequel.
I can't remember her name.
But I thought Liz White did a fantastic
It's a
job.
Bit of a tough role. I mean, to be fair, you can also say it's a bit of a tough role for whoever plays Arthur Kipps as well. Because, I mean, Daniel Radcliffe, like, 80-90% of this film is him just wandering around this house investigating strange noises. Like, there's no one else in the house with him that he can verbally speak to, so he literally just kind of has to act by looking afraid, by looking curious, and it's a bit of a hard sell, and it's the same thing, in the original version too.
This is why I think the house being more of a character is a massive benefit, because he gets to explore, and obviously the bigger budget in the TV, they got the house is really elaborate.
Oh, it really is. Yeah, there's it is one of the core differences. So between the two versions, in 2012, the house is much more Victorian looking, and Alice Drablow, who's again recently deceased, she's let the house fall into total disrepair. It's basically too big for this elderly woman to manage and maintain.
Who's being haunted to
death by
Yeah. So do you ever get the idea? It's never really said in both. Do you get the feeling that eventually she was killed by her?
Interesting. I don't know if I've ever properly thought it.
Like that idea of literally being haunted to death.
She's maybe been scared to death, or did you mean like she's killed herself because she couldn't?
No, I think
cope with.
She's obviously dealt with it for years.
She's been living with this.
But what was the final thing that killed her?
Just like she gave up, basically.
Yeah.
Like she just.
I also feel Alice
fighting anymore.
She was more, again, has more of a presence in the '89 film. Even though we never actually see it, just because they have you had to research what this thing was called, wasn't it? Because in the 2012 one, Daniel Radcliffe is going through old papers and he's finding out the story of what happened through letters and stuff like that.
He pieces the mystery together via
Whereas in the '89 one, it's a sound recording device.
Yeah, it's a phonograph cylinders. So it's almost like a dictaphone. It basically is a dictaphone, but like the earliest known.
So we hear her voice and we hear how Alice. she's being haunted, and the fact she's managed to keep the house in relatively good repair. She's ignored her for the majority of it. The house is almost like I like the way they describe it as like in the commentaries, on the cusp of the new era. Like she liked a new tech.
She did.
And her husband did. So like they have electric lights. They have a generator, which is I really like, because like he wants to keep the house as bright as possible.
Yeah.
So when the lights go out, he's going to run out, do the generator, and wind up the generator.
Yeah.
Because the house doesn't have electricity in the 2012 one, does it?
No. So I was trying to piece this together in my mind.
I think it's just it's oil lamps.
Yeah, I was trying to think of I do have the book. Unfortunately, it's it's back with my mum's, but I can't remember exactly what time it's set in when he goes to the house, when the bulk of the story unfolds.
It's definitely post World War One.
Do you think so? Because I think it could also, just visually, the 2012 one looks like it could be set like Edwardian era, like late Edwardian era maybe.
Yeah.
With the cars.
Just pre-World War One maybe.
Yeah, but the 1989 one, it takes place in 1925. So we're a little bit later.
Yeah.
So I think that, it's maybe a bit ambiguous in the 2012 one anyway. But yeah, I did like that inclusion in the 89 one. Whereas yes, the house in 2012, it's very much Daniel Radcliffe lighting one of those gas lamp things and like walking around the house with lighting the candles just. I
love his outfit, the black, like I say, Edwardian suit that he has to wear, that he wears, and
it's so sumptuously gothic, and I just love it. I love it. I love it.
At the time, I can't even remember the last time prior to that film we'd had a proper big budget gothic movie. Because famously, I don't think they do that well.
No, they don't.
I think realistically, Daniel Radcliffe was the big pull-in for this film.
Yeah.
And obviously, it is a great film. But I think if you put anyone else in that role, I don't think it would have done nearly as well.
I think a lot of it was people were ultimately curious as to what Harry Potter was going to do next. They were curious to see Harry Potter in a horror film. Yeah. But I also would like to think part of it was the excitement of seeing a new Hammer horror again. And also, there's
definitely been groups of people that were excited about Hammer come back, or just excited to see, who were terrified by the original TV version, wanting to see a new version of it.
This is a famous story, remember?
Yeah, very famous story. I loved watching the play.
Second longest running play in West End history. Second only to The Mousetrap.
Yeah, and it's so simple. It's something I think I know I said we'd start with the 2012 one, but I basically just bounced between the two. Something the 1989 one does obviously it came 2 years after.
Yeah.
Well, it would have been filming about a year after the play
came
out. It uses sound really well.
Sound design, I think.
Obviously, due to budget, there's a lot of let us hear it rather than showing us it. Like,
Yeah.
not necessarily exposition, but just the play obviously only has 3 people in it.
Yeah.
That's 2 people, like 2 actors and the woman.
Yeah.
And we mainly rely on sound effects to tell the story.
tell the
and
story.
It's kind of the same in the 89 one. The 2012 one, we were in the jump scare era. So there is a fair few
Yes.
in there. But a lot of them feel really earned.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many moments. I love when he's sat at the table going through the letters. We see her, like, through the
in
door,
background.
across, like, the hallway, in another room.
Yes.
And then we kind of, like, cut to her perspective. The camera, like, heading towards him. There's, like, a mirror on the wall, and you see, like, a glimpse of her. The house has such character.
Yeah.
And usually, before a scare comes, there's always something in the background a minute or so beforehand to tell you that something is coming.
I think both adaptations do a really nice job of there's a lurking sense of dread.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we know something's going to happen. If you're not familiar with the story, you know that it's building to something. You know, who the hell is this woman? Like, what's her relationship with Alice? Who, you know, and for anyone who doesn't necessarily know the story, the woman in black. So she was sister to Alice Drablow, the old woman who died in the house. She's called Janet. It's with a Janet. Yeah, it's with an E, Janet. And she had a baby boy out of wedlock. And because of the scandal and because of, you know, the shame it would wreak upon the family, Alice, who was married at the time, said, well, I will adopt the boy officially and I will raise him as my son. And Janet did not like that idea. She was very possessive over her own child. And she couldn't bear the fact that he was being raised by another woman, even though it was her sister. The boy ultimately drowns in an accidental pony and trap crash out on the marshes. And Janet sees this happen. And she's so overcome with grief. She disowns her sister. She says, you know, you let him die, you know, you murdered him, you know, you're a terrible, how dare you keep him from me, you didn't even try and save him. And she's so overcome with anger and grief she ends up killing herself. Well, this is in the 2012 one anyway. In the book, I believe she just wastes away.
And in the 89 one, she took her son back and they both died in the crash together.
Yeah, she kidnaps him in an escape attempt for them to both go and live somewhere else, and they both died. They drown in the marshes. So every kind of adaptation, every version, it has a different story. But in the book, I do believe she just wastes away.
Yeah.
She just stops eating. She stops drinking. She just literally dies. But in the 2012 version, she hangs herself in the nursery, in her boy's nursery.
God, that scare.
Yes.
Jesus Christ. This hanging from the ceiling was horrifying.
And so the woman in black, as we mentioned before, she's been seen regularly over the years. And unfortunately, whenever she is seen, it prefaces a child dying. She's a bad omen, basically. A child will die in horrible circumstances.
I always find that interesting, like, the difference between two adaptations, the town's relationship with her.
Yes.
The town obviously knows about her, but it's not really shown. Like, they're pretty welcoming to Arthur in the 89 one, but in the 2012 one, they don't like the fact that there's a stranger there.
Yeah.
They are horrified once they realise that he's seen her.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that happens is instantly blamed on him, and they want him out of town.
They know what it means. Yes, and the 2012 version is not afraid to show children dying. They are much more of a character, I guess, or a presence, I guess, in 2012. So I think, I lost count, but I think in total we see like 6 children or something die, like in the present day. But then we also, you know, learn of some historical deaths as well.
Yeah.
So the 2012 one literally opens with 3 little girls jumping out of a nursery window, jumping to their death. We see a girl whose parents are so possessive and, you know, desperately wanted to stay alive that they keep her locked in a basement out of, you know, so the woman in black won't realise she's there, I guess. And it's futile in the end because she ends up dying in a fire. We see a girl drink some lye who ends up poisoning herself to death. And then in 2012, it's very much inferred that the woman makes them kill themselves.
Yeah. Whereas in the 89 one, the closer we get to it, it's more like she causes accidents.
She causes accidents, yeah, but she's very much kind of orchestrating the whole thing.
Yeah. One thing I kind of like the difference between like almost the motive of the woman is why she wants to go against Arthur. I feel like in the 2012 one, she doesn't like that he's in the house. And I feel like other people have seen her, and that's just led to cause of events anyway. But he is in her house. He is interfering, and he tries to help. He thinks he can break the curse, but ultimately has also misunderstood the story and how malevolent the spirit is.
Never forgive.
In the 1989 one, I think it's a bit unclear as to why she goes after Arthur. Obviously, he's in the house, but this is another one of those ghost stories where the ghost isn't tied to the house.
No, she can flit about wherever she wants.
Yeah, she's been seen throughout the town. I think she went after Arthur because he stopped the gypsy child from being crushed by those logs from coming up. He denied her the kill.
That kill.
And I think that's why she has a personal... She's a vendetta.
Like, all right, like, who's this young dude who's just strolled
They changed the names of a couple of characters between, and Adrian Rollins.
Adrian Rollins, yeah.
Who later went to play the character of Dr. Rhodes in The Woman in Black 2 Angel of Death. He had a little small role in that.
In another lovely bit of film irony, he also plays Daniel Radcliffe's dad. He's Harry Potter's dad. He's James Potter in the Harry Potter films. So both Harry and James have also played Arthur Kipps, which I love.
Yeah. But they changed the name. It's Arthur Kidd.
It's Arthur Kidd, which,
They changed a couple of other characters.
Yeah, so Samuel Daly is renamed as Mr. Tuvey.
Yeah.
There's a few other changes.
Both people to play them were absolutely fantastic as well.
Oh, look, I mean, both adaptations. Like, I don't think you can fault the acting on it, in any way. Yeah, I mean, 1989, it's a slew of famous British talent, and 2012, it's pretty much the same. Kieran Hines plays Samuel Daly, and he's one of those actors, like, he's popped up consistently in so many films, like a lot of big budget stuff, but also low budget stuff too. He's never made it to A-list status, but he's just such a really good character actor. And there's such a melancholy, to the whole town as well. I think it's more profound maybe in the 2012 one.
Yeah.
Because they're all so aware. Well, most of the town folk have children as well.
Yeah.
So they're all fully aware of, like, oh my God, he's seen her. He's in the house. Like, he's provoking her.
It was one of those they always have the question of why don't they just leave? And it's like, most of these... I can imagine most of these people are farmers, people who earn their living off the land that they have. They can't just leave.
They can't just up sticks.
There's one scene in the 89 one which I really liked. I know you really like because it's not in the 2012 one, which is Alice Strablow's funeral. And it's in the play as well, because that's where the woman is first revealed.
Yes, I love that.
And I thought that was a great scene. It was. I was really looking forward to seeing that because I really liked that in the play.
I love it.
But I think the way they did the story in 2012, I don't think it would have fit.
No, 2012 still works. So yeah, when Arthur arrives at Crith and Gifford, the funeral's already taken place, and basically his job is to just go to the house to sort out all of Alice's papers and whatnot. But I did really love seeing the funeral scene, just having her appear in the back, and Arthur just kind of a little bit, shocked to see her. And I really love how it's described in the book too, because he's a bit shocked that there's another mourner there, the only other mourner in the church. But he notices that there's something not quite right. She's wearing this veil. She's wearing, like, Victorian garb. So she immediately looks out of place. But he doesn't look away in fear. He looks away because he feels like it's rude to stare at this woman that's clearly sick and maybe dying. Like, thinking, oh God, people probably look at her all the time. She's like the town pariah. So I'm just going to look away because it's rude. I love that little detail in the book. So I'm happy we saw the funeral
One
scene.
interesting... you said this while we were watching it, because in the 89 one, she has a veil up, and her face is fully on display.
We see her full, yeah.
And you said, I think you preferred the look of the veil in the 2012 one. And I like both, but there's certain scenes in the 89 one where I really like, it feels personal because we see her eyes staring him down. Yeah. Yeah. And it's spoopy as fuck.
It is spoopy.
But I do like both interpretations. But I'm trying to think of both scenes, like, where Arthur first encounters the woman properly. at the funeral, he doesn't know. Oh, so we see her later as well, like in the graveyard.
Yeah.
But the first time he properly realizes something's not right is when he's on the island. We see the little ruins. It's a little graveyard as well, and that great reveal of her on the marshes just staring at him.
Mm.
It's so unsettling.
Mm.
Also, really like well done, because it's kind of one of those ones where he moves away and she's just already there, and it's like, where was she hiding?
Where was she?
Where was she hiding? And if I'm right, in the 2012 one, he kind of looks out the window and he sees her in the graveyard, like amongst the trees, and I think the 89 one did that reveal better than the 2012 one did. But I think the 2012 one kind of like lets the mystery, like Arthur, become like starting to understand the supernatural side of it.
Yeah.
It likes to draw it out.
It does.
Muddled that sentence up massively, but yeah, they draw out him getting to the point where he's like, "Oh God, oh right, this is
a ghost."
Because I feel like the 2012 one spread over more days.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
a little bit longer.
Arthur in the 89 one, I feel like comes to terms quite quickly, and I feel like at that point he knows something's up. He just doesn't know what.
Yeah. You mentioned before her relationship with Arthur and how it seems to be a bit maybe different motives in the two different versions. I've always found her relationship with him very kind of nebulous in terms of, why does she hone in on this guy? And it almost appears to me in 2012 she gives him time to solve the mystery, to learn her story. Like there's scenes where he's reading all of the old letters and he sees the birth certificate and the death certificate, and like he's piecing it all together. It's almost like she lets that happen. And then obviously we get the persistent banging of the rocking chair up in the nursery that's locked, and it's driving him mad. He can't get into the nursery. It's like she's calling him up to the nursery. She wants him to find out exactly what happened here. And I think, okay, well why does she want him to know? Why is it important for
maybe just a new face in the house?
A new face in the house. And then I think a huge difference really from the two versions is, I think that 2012 they make much more of an emphasis on her devotion to her son. Yeah. And there's a really kind of harrowing scene near the end where Daniel Radcliffe, he thinks the way to break the curse is to reunite Janet with her son. She's so consumed with grief, even in death. If
he thinks that the two ghosts, because he's seen footprints of the ghost of her.
Yes,
in both adaptations, you hear both.
The boy
is
around
of them
as well.
So he thinks they're trying to find each other. Yeah,
they're lost, and so he goes into the marshes where the pony and trap crashed.
This shows the budget that they didn't have in the.
They didn't have this in.
Something I really liked in the 89 one, the sound when he's over the causeway surrounded by fog. He keeps hearing it's like 3 different times he hears the crash happening. That's using the sound effects more than showing us.
That's incredible in both versions. I think it's
truly. Yeah. One thing I really like about the Blu-ray as well, they give us it in widescreen as well.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was just using bits of film that wasn't used before, and it looks amazing.
Yeah. But I do love
when he retrieves the body in 2012.
Yeah, he goes in to get the body of the boy, and he then waits for her to come into he presents the body in the nursery.
She lets him have enough time to have a shower and get changed before coming.
And then it's almost like he's waiting for her.
He wants to make sure that she sees that he has brought her son back.
Yeah, and then she eventually does arrive in a great jump scare in the 2012 one.
Oh, it's coming down the corridor and the lights just go...
Yeah, and then she just kind of like, she's dead, and then she just looks up in the nursery and then just like rolls towards him, and he like absolutely freaks out, and you see her bend over the boy. And then this is strange in some versions, you can hear the boy, Nathaniel he's called, say, "No, you're not my mummy." In some versions you can't. But then it then follows on to a scene where she's so angry she looms up at Arthur, screaming in what is presumably anger that it still hasn't worked. Her boy is there, and he's rejected her again, because of course to him she won't be his mum. His mum is Alice. That's the one he.
We get a little bit of that in 89 as well. We hear it. Well, we say a little bit of it because we hear a child shouting for its mummy. Who is it? Who's he shouting for?
Yeah, which one?
And
Which
I think
sister?
there has to be a reason when Arthur initially gets into the nursery.
Yeah.
I think it's the little boy that lets him into the nursery. I think the little boy's locking the nursery to keep his real mother out. Because as soon as she gets in, the next time we go in there, the nursery's completely destroyed.
Oh, interesting.
That's how I view that. So in both adaptations, Nathaniel doesn't know that that's his mother.
Yeah, he's just scared to death of this bloody woman that keeps following him around.
I think, should we talk? Obviously, the two endings are very different. So this is the major spoiler bit.
Yeah.
I'm going to say. I'm not sure how it ends in the book, but in the play, it ends 6 months later, and back in London, and Arthur's with his family, and the woman spooks his horse, and overturns the carriage.
Yeah.
Is that how it ends in the book?
Little bit different.
A little bit different.
Yeah.
We'll not spoil the book entirely. And that's quite similar to how the 89 one ends. Because he is messed up by this, and she physically makes him ill in... I'm going to save what does that later on, because I've got a question for you in a little bit. He is purely traumatized by this, and there's revelation that his boss has sent him there because he was also too scared to go because he's been before.
He
sent him there almost knowing.
He knows.
Almost burns down his office to get rid of any of the evidence.
Yeah.
Some time goes by, goes away with his family. This, again, a great shot for TV there on a sailing boat. When you see her stood on top of the water.
And
a tree collapses on them.
Watching.
So it's very reminiscent of the play.
Yeah.
And it's
and all of them die.
It's harrowing. It's so like...
All of them die.
Yeah. It's pretty disturbing.
It's
not necessarily graphic, but it's the implication you see, like, you can't get away. You absolutely can't. It's the fear in his eyes when the other people at his work say there's been a woman waiting outside his office for him.
It's the implication that time has gone by and he's had this happy time with his family. They're on a little vacation, having this lovely moment. Couldn't be further away from Chris and Gifford if he tried.
Because the house has been burnt down, as we find out.
And she's there. She just appears out of nowhere. And like the mantra that we hear in 2012 is never forgive, never forget. And that just, she will never stop.
So I think...
She never intended him to get off scot-free.
The ending of 2012, I really like, because we know that his son is coming to join him. Mm-hmm. And he obviously is basically told that she will go for his son. So I think it always helps, especially in a feature movie, when there is a time limit put on things. So you know it's like there's a matter of urgency. He has to solve this and fix this before his son arrives. So he has that. I think they did a really good job. The train station looks very, very similar. Like you can see 2012 does pay a lot of homage to that film. Mm-hmm. He's just talking away, and his little boy who met him at the train station, they're like, right, we're going back to London right now. Walks onto the train track because he looks and he sees the woman stood on the upper side, and again, she's got such a presence in this film because we see more of her in this than we do in the original one. He jumps down to save his son. We think that he saved him, and as the train's going by, you see Daly. That's his name, isn't it? Daly.
Yeah.
Looking through as the window's going past, and you see her just staring, and you see all
the kids.
children. So, within context, his own child is there.
Yeah.
Which is horrifying.
Yeah.
The train goes by. They didn't survive.
No.
But it's weirdly sweet. Obviously, he has died protecting his son, and his wife is there.
Yeah, she appears.
And they go off together, which is kind of a bit sweet. And you asked me, like, why do you think his son was there? Because the other children are clearly trapped with her.
Why didn't the woman claim
I think it's because he, unlike her son, where the carer couldn't save and didn't sacrifice himself to save, he did. He jumped down, gave everything to try and save his son. And I think that's what did it. It's kind of like, it's very bittersweet because it's pretty horrific what has just happened. But they are reunited as a family.
They are reunited.
It's almost a happier ending, even though, like in both adaptations,
it's still bleak
they both
as
die.
hell.
Yeah, I love the final shot of the woman. She kind of look like the camera's just like looking at her. It's like almost like you're looking at this part of her face and just goes.
Yeah,
it's not a jump scare. It's just
just a glance.
Just a glance, and it's brilliant. And that's like the the longest we focus on her face for, Liz White's face, and I think again she looks incredible.
Yeah, I like the
Which
the
ending do you
makeup.
prefer?
Oh God, I
really like her standing out on the water.
I
I kind of like how evil that is at the end of the 2012 one.
when she has all the children. She's got like collecting the souls. Like even in death, they're not free from her. She's got them all. Oh, I don't have a preference. Like it's not a cop-out answer. I genuinely don't. I think the 2012 one is bleak, but there is a hint of optimism at the fact that he does get to be reunited with his wife and he can take his child.
He saved his son's soul,
Yeah.
essentially.
But there's such a blunt finality to the 1989 one that it's so kind of like out of the blue and it's so brutal.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't have a preference. I think both work
I
within
think
the context
the 89
of the
one
film.
benefits from, like I said, I always thought Daniel Radcliffe felt a bit too young to be like
Yeah.
a father in it and a widower. Adrian Rollins, he's obviously a bit older.
Yeah.
Having his wife still be alive and have two kids, making him more of a family man and every man, I think it makes him more relatable character than Daniel Radcliffe.
What I do also like, sorry, about the ending of the 2012 one again, is going back to, the children that she has. And there's a really horrible moment too where the train goes by and you can hear her scream, like her face contorts into this horrible scream right before the train strikes him. But the implication that she still has those children's spirits, like she's in charge of the spirits, it just kind of speaks to something more overall that the 2012 version does. It is her relationship with them, but also her motivation for why she does what she does. Whereas I guess the 1989 one, we piece her story together, but it's still a little bit more ambiguous. And I also think because we don't see any children die in 1989, they don't necessarily hone that point home that she kills children because hers was taken from her. Yeah. It's more of just she's a very angry, malevolent spirit and she will kill whoever, crosses her path. Whereas, the 2012 one, it's no. Yeah. She's bitter and she wants children. She wants the children.
The question I had for you, which version is scarier?
Honestly, for me, I think the 89 one might just trump it a little bit.
You mean because at that one moment that you actually screamed? And it's the only real jump scare in the entire movie.
It's the one jump scare that's in the film.
And it's
holy
so effective.
And I knew it was
You're
coming.
waiting for it. Like, I think watching a lot of modern day haunted house movies, like all through the film, you're waiting. There's so many places, like interesting camera movements where like he moves somewhere, then the camera starts to move first, and then he falls, like leading us into these spaces where she could be.
Mm.
But because you never actually see her in the house.
No.
But you're always assuming that she's going to be there.
Yeah, we only really see her on the marshes or in the graveyard.
Yeah, but that jump scare when he's in bed is so terrifying.
He's actually left the house at this point. He's back at the little pub that he's staying in on like the mainland, and he's in bed, and he wakes up, gripping a little toy soldier that the boy Nathaniel has kind of been taunting him with whilst he's been in the house. And we can hear the boy speaking to him. And Arthur's in bed and he's just kind of looking around trying to see the child. And then out of the blue, you just see the woman just leering over him in the bed, screeching like this horrible, horrible scream. And she's grinning, like she is loving every little bit of fear she's inflicting on him. But it's so, when the camera just turns and she's there, it's like, bed is a safe place. We're meant to be safe. It
plays
in
on
bed.
That fear of.
He's not even in the spooky house. He's in a pub.
It plays on that fear of whenever you watch a horror movie, and then you wake up in the middle of the night and you see something. It's like your dressing gown hangs on the door. It's bright red, but it's dark in the middle of the night. When I first watched the 2012 one, I remember I got home, I was playing Xbox. I had a big black coat that was on the edge of my bed. I turned, all I see is a black figure, and I'm like, that's what these films do.
Fears.
Overall, I'd say, that scene aside, I think 89 is more rewatchable. And I do generally think the 2012 one has some amazing scares.
Mm-hmm.
Some that are like very jump scary, a lot that are like just build and build.
Yeah.
Just constant. Whenever he steps foot into that house, there's tension.
Yeah.
And all of that is lost in the second film.
I think for me, both are done so brilliantly. And that's the thing, there is no definitive version. You know,
they're both different enough that they can both just coexist.
I'm not going to end this by saying, you know, like, oh, watch 2012 and maybe watch 89. Like, I honestly think both are compulsive viewing. If you're interested in the story, then both. They kind of enrich each other because they don't necessarily cancel each other out. As like, you know, one focuses more on her motivation and her malevolence. The other is more of a bit of a slow burn. And less emphasis on her and her motivation, but just more like the trauma that she can inflict. So both are absolutely brilliant. But I think 1989 scared me a bit more. Not even necessarily the jump scare, which I did legitimately scream and jump when I watched it. But it was more just like...
That was great. It was so good.
The scenes of him in the house and he can hear the boy and, you know, the toy soldier that just sort of appears in his hand. Like, to me, that was just a bit more eerie. But I think the 2012 one is more despairing.
I think
purely because of the children element.
I know. One of my favourite moments is when he takes Tuvi to the nursery. Like, oh, it was locked before. And the horror in his face when he sees that it's been destroyed.
Oh, he faints. He can't cope with it. He literally like collapses. And fear will do that to you.
Again, I think that's purely that performance because he is acting off nothing for the majority of the film. He is brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm quite glad he's worked solidly since, but I'm glad
I love
that makes me respect The Woman in Black 2 Angel of Death a little bit more.
Because he's in it.
Just because he's in it, but that is still like a bottom tier
I love
sequel.
The exploration of fear in both, I think, is amazing. I mean, the scene where he's in the nursery and he can hear the boy and you know, he's got the toy soldier and he's so scared, he is literally paralysed to the spot. I mean, you know, you were like, I'd be gone, I'd be out of there in a shot. Yeah. Sometimes fear, you literally can't move sometimes. You are just so scared.
Yeah.
Your body just
both
doesn't
adaptations, work. He's given a dog to keep company.
Spider.
I think they use that much better in 82 because
89.
That thing, that's the book, isn't it? 89. Because dogs obviously have that, they are good companions. It's relatable. But when the dog gets scared and is gone, because the dog is kind of like an early warning system for him.
Yeah.
And is what leads him back into the nursery when it's open. I get to the point where he literally just goes to get an axe. He's like, this door's coming down. I need to know what's in it. Because you need to hear this bouncing in there. And then it's just open.
Yeah.
But then when the dog leaves and he's on his own.
Yeah.
You can see he becomes truly terrified, especially once because the power going, the lights going out is what leads him outside. The dog gets called away. That dog got so scared it went all the way through across the marshes back home. There
is the scene in the book, which it hasn't been in either of the adaptations, but it is in the play, is when the dog is distracted because it hears whistling out on the marshes, like something calling the dog out into the marshes. And it does happen in 1989 and the dog buggers off, but we learn, it goes all the way back home.
It gets so scared it goes home.
In the book, she tries to drown the dog. She calls it into the marshes so it'll get stuck in the mud, and Kips goes out and manically gets Spider out, which is they would be so distressing to watch it on a film. Can you imagine that? Seeing a dog nearly drowned?
Practically trying to do it would be a bit difficult as well.
Reading it it's a pretty gruesome chapter. He does manage to save Spider ultimately, but it's just a horrible concept that she knows the dog is his one comfort, and so she wants to get rid of it.
Yeah. Do you have any more notes on this?
I just have some general things I guess I wanna say. I mean, I'm so happy that we got this.
I'm glad that it's now
so
quite
happy.
Easy to find. I say easy to find. It's on YouTube, so you can watch it. But this film literally disappeared for decades.
It did.
And you really enjoyed looking in the comments of that jump scare, and one of the best ones I have vivid memories of watching this on Christmas Eve and then my mother having to scrape me off the ceiling.
Yeah.
Everyone just relived that. What a film to play on Christmas Eve.
Yeah, YouTube basically is just people because that scene itself has just been uploaded with the woman over the bed, and people. It just seems it's a lot of people who were kids when they watched it in Christmas Eve in 1989, just wanting to relive the trauma from the safety of YouTube,
from the safety of adulthood.
Yeah, exactly. Just I'm conquering this fear. Nope, still scary.
Obviously this came back. I'd say the success of the 2012 film is what brought this film back into the interest. And it does seem like people are very fond of it, and I loved watching it. I'm 100% going to watch that. We basically watched half of it again this morning, watching the commentary.
Yeah, we did. I love the commentary with Mark Gatiss, Kim Newman, Andy.
Yeah, I'm fascinated. I will 100% watch that again, and I'm 100% going to watch the 2012 one.
Oh,
again.
I will too.
It's like, yeah, I just really like both these adaptations. I am 100% going to see the play again because that was just great. We got to see in this really old Gothic theatre that was in Liverpool. That was good fun.
The Playhouse. I've
the
seen
scariest part was when the fire alarm went off.
Too. Oh God, yeah.
Nope, that's not part of the play, guys.
Yeah, well, I've seen it. I've seen it in the Fortune Theatre, which is the one where it consistently runs in London, and that was a brilliant experience. I also did want to mention, because I don't think we talked about director or writer for
either
1989, but it's directed by a guy called Herbert Wise, who was a very prolific TV director, and the screenplay was written by a guy called Nigel Neal. Now, he was a huge player in British television back in like 70s, 80s. He wrote the Quatermass Experiment, which became very famous. He wrote a lot for BBC. And in another nice little bit of irony, he also wrote a lot for Hammer films as well. He wrote a lot of their screenplays too.
Who directed the 2012 one?
A guy called James Watkins.
Yeah. Do we have the budget and box office of the 2012 one?
Yeah, budget was between 15 and 17 million. And
15 and 17 or 50 and 70?
15.
15 and 17.
Between 15 and 17.
Consider how good that film looks.
Yeah. And
honestly, I would have assumed that was a $50 million film.
Yeah. Well, the box office was 127.7 million.
So it did pretty well.
It did very, very well. I love the 2012 film. I went to see it. I've spoken about this cinema before in our cinema experiences, but it's the Old Picture House in Liverpool, which is just like, it retains all of its tradition, like original architecture and everything. It's beautiful.
Sound travels. I've seen one film in there, and sound travels really strangely around there.
I mean, you can imagine seeing this film in that cinema. It was just perfect. Like, the atmosphere was just so gothic in and of itself. I love the 2012 film. Like, I return to it often, even though it's bleak as hell. I just think it's such a good ghost story. But yeah, I am so happy that we got this. I think it's brilliant. Like, I was so happy to watch it, and it really lived up to so many expectations.
Yeah.
And also, we didn't mention the actress who plays the woman in 1989. She's called Pauline Moran. And she does a brilliant job as well. She's got such an expressive face.
Yeah.
And again, because we see a lot more of her face compared to 2012, which, she's veiled. Yeah, she does a really good job of just hating Arthur, wanting him to die. So as different as they are, both are absolutely worth watching.
Absolutely.
And I think it just speaks to how well the original source material is. The book is just wonderful in and of itself. And again, different.
Yeah, I think
from the adaptation too.
Susan Hill wasn't a fan of some of the changes they made in the 89 one.
No.
But just going back to what our original video was going to be, 10 years on from the 2012 one, I think it's pretty obvious to say this film absolutely holds up.
Yeah.
And it's still worth a rewatch. And
it really is.
We've talked about it again. I can't remember if this movie, our last video, will have come out yet. But we kind of say is that lovely period where we had like Insidious in 2011, we had Sinister, Woman in Black in 2012, The Conjuring in 2013,
it was a great time.
That was a really good couple of years.
It was a strong couple of years to be a ghost fans.
2012 was a big one for ghost children.
These both films too, something that's kind of underrated, but they make the daytime spooky.
Yeah.
A lot of the scares happen in daylight, foggy, overcast daylight, but daytime nonetheless. And this sound design in both is absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
So check them both out. I said that. It's literally all on YouTube. I don't know how legal that is. This copy here is the only copy I've seen on Blu-ray. Like, literally, when I saw it, I was like, it was the only one there.
Getting it.
So I was like, I feel like I would have gotten a lot of trouble if I didn't get it. I was between getting that and getting X. So I got that and completely threw our plans for this video out the window and probably made it twice as long. Made twice as much work for myself.
But it's worth it.
Both of them are absolutely worth it. Great Halloween films and all spooky season films.
Absolutely. Like, October, November is just peak gothic season. Like, when is a better time to turn the lights off, light a candle, and watch a gothic ghost story?
Yeah, and get scraped off the ceiling.
So,
thanks for stopping by, guys. Check these both out. Woman in Black, the first one. I know the second one is on Netflix, but the first one pops on on and off it constantly.
Yeah, and read the book. It's only it's a novella technically. It's not a full on novel. It's very short, so it's totally doable. You could probably read it in a day if you dared.
Yeah. So, we'll see you next week.
Bye.